Seth Cohn, it's nice to run into you here at this informal gathering, and thanks for spending a couple minutes with Granite Grok.
Absolutely. Granite Grok's one of the best. I love talking to you guys.
Well, thank you. Now, I did put up a post this past week where on WMUR's CloseUp, you had a little bit of a run-in with David Hess, or actually he was kind of pushing that, where he called you part of the extremist right wing of the Republican Party, all anarchists as far as libertarians are concerned, and then made a joke with with Representative Baruti, saying, "How's it feel to have 100 votes and be in the majority in the House?" Basically, several slaps across the face, with you being the victim of making fun of people standing up for liberty, freedom, and what the words in the Constitution actually stand for. So, my question is, I watched you sitting there taking it with a wry smile on your face. What was your real reaction?
Well, my real reaction was he was absolutely correct. How does it feel being in the majority with only 100 votes? But what he neglected to say was that he was also part of that majority. They voted. Let me start over here.
Basically, your arm's jiggling the table.
Oh, sorry, thanks. Yeah, I was laughing really hard at that because, in fact, Hess was right. The Democrats were in the majority with only 100 votes, but the reason they were in the majority was because of the moderates, people like Representative Hess. So while he was blaming me for the problem, he was actually a bigger problem. I would say we had more conservative bills, especially fiscally conservative bills, that died because people like Representative Hess voted with the Democrats than the bills that I voted with the Democrats on. So the problem was clearly that the Democrats were able to split the Republican Party. I think Hess and I just disagree as to who the problem is. Unfortunately, he's a rhino. And you can look at his voting record, you can look at my voting record, and the House Republican Alliance, which rates everything based on the platform and all of the constitutional issues, and they gave me an 80, and Hess is far lower than that. So if the question is, who's really the Republican? I'm the Republican, not David Hess.
Now, this was all concerning CACR 12, which had to do with educational funding. And obviously he was thinking that, well, we'd rather settle for something to be seen as doing something than going for perhaps a total solution to the problem. Your response?
The problem with that is that this was a horrible amendment that would have absolutely given up 90% of the battle, and this was throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I wasn't willing to give up on the issue, as unfortunately many of the people who've been fighting this for 20 years were willing to. They were willing to give up finally and say, we give in, we're giving into the courts, just let us make the financial decisions. And we weren't willing to give up that fight. And yes, it was politics, a strange bedfellows. I thought it was really funny that the Democrats were absolutely a solid no block. They were not going to ever vote yes. It didn't matter what we said, and I knew that going in, and that was actually my biggest concern, and I had checked with them multiple times. I said, if I say things that you're going to go, well, wait, maybe we should vote for this, are you going to vote yes? And they said, no, we're never going to vote yes. So this idea that Lynch was going to bring in Democrat votes, it was never going to happen. So they had watered and weakened down this bill to get Democrats to support something that here I was saying that this bill was horrible, would give the Democrats exactly what they wanted, and even then they weren't going to vote yes. So I don't see that their compromise was worth anything.
He obviously took a dim view of your stances, and he tried to insinuate that you turned tail on the vote, whereas you had tried to take a few minutes, and time is valuable on that show, saying, listen, I already told leadership exactly what was going to happen. If you change this, if the Senate softened it, we would be no. And he didn't seem to like that at all.
Well, he didn't like that because nobody wanted to point that out. One of the reasons that O'Brien went public and said we need Democrats is he had done the vote counts. He knew that without people like myself and Representative Benoist and the other Liberty votes, he couldn't pass this. He had done it back the previous year in the House version by the skin of his teeth, and I voted for it then. I was one of the people who said, I can compromise, this is as far as I can go, but no further. We had a meeting with people like Ovid LaMontagne, who was heavily pushing this amendment behind the scenes, and they said, we need to soften this more, we need to weaken it, we need to get the governor to support it, and basically we'd said, you're not going to get this, and they didn't like that.
You may sign your bill.
Yeah. So where were we?
So I guess my next
Politics.
Yeah. So my next question is, in the next session, do you think that this is going to come up again, or will the pendulum will have moved far enough back towards the Democrats that this is a dead issue for quite some time?
I think it's a dead issue. One of the reasons I'm not running is because I've done all the political calculations, and in the political calculations that I'm seeing, we're going to end up with a very, very moderate milquetoast House. In the same way that the Senate wasn't willing to do anything and so kept voting no, we're going to end up with a House that isn't willing to do anything and votes no. In fact, if anything, looking at the people who are running in the Senate right now, good people like Josh Youssef and Phil Griazzo, I think the Senate is actually going to end up being more radical than this House is.
Radical. Now, there's a word that the Democrats love to use, and use it not as a plowshare but as a bat or a mace.
Well,
how do you use that word?
When I use
radical?
the word radical, I mean willing to challenge the status quo. Because it takes radicals to make change. Because you basically have the people that say something's wrong, we need to change it, and the people who say, I like things the way they are. This year, the House has been the radical body, and we've been willing to pass bills to change things. And the House has been the conservative moderates who say everything's fine the way it is. I think the House is going to go a lot more conservative, and the Senate's going to go more radical.
Okay, when you say change, change means a new direction. The question is what do you mean, or what would you mean by a new direction? A direction towards what?
Well, in my mind, it's towards the constitutional limitations of government. And that is the thing that's been lacking. I think the biggest thing that the people are seeing right now is that government's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And that, unfortunately, the people mean less and less and less. And that's not correct. And it takes somebody challenging that status quo to say, no, the people matter. And in the House, that's been the battle this year. And unfortunately, there are a bunch of battles we lost where I got up and I said the people should be in charge, not the politicians, not the legislature, not the executive, the people. And that was a minority viewpoint in the Senate this time. Senator Forsyth and Senator White being some of the examples of people that banged their head against the wall and they basically ended up giving up. I'm hoping that more people come into the Senate willing to challenge that more.
You're one of the more respected liberty and freedom House representatives, and I think it's a sort of a sad commentary that you're not going to be running again, and I'm sorry to even have to say that, but given your status of New Hampshire Rep Emeritus now, are you looking to endorse any races coming up for either the primaries or in the general election?
I absolutely will be endorsing quite a lot of people. I'm going to put out sort of a truth sheet. The people that on both sides of the aisle I think are trustable, and the people I think aren't trustable, because their constituents need to know that. They need to have somebody to say, this person tells you one thing but does another when they actually get there. And I'm going to stay active in politics. I think it would be impossible for me not to be.
Any parting words for Representative David Hess?
Well, Representative Hess, you really made me want to use a four-letter word. But since I was on TV, I wasn't able to do so. But luckily, thanks to the fact that this is going to be online, and we don't have to deal with censors, I will use that four-letter word. That four-letter word is rhino.
Seth Cohn, I want to say thank you very much for taking a few minutes with Grain O'Clock.
Thank you.
GrokTV.